Hi, everyone. I'm Thérèse, and this is New York Girl Again, The After, the podcast for caregivers who survived the hardest chapter of their lives and are now gathering both the courage and the strength to write the next one. I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend this time with me. Today, let's talk about that four-letter word, that constant companion, the one that never really leaves us, our shadow friend, fear. It slips in slowly, and before you even realize it, fear has unpacked its bags. It's made itself at home, like a tenant with squatter's rights. Through caregiving, through loss, through the after, fear has been my constant companion, not just during the hardest days of caregiving, but long after my caregiving journey was over. This episode is for every caregiver who's ever lain awake at night listening for a sound, for every soul who's carried more than anyone could see, for everyone who's felt the quiet, constant weight of fear and wondered if they were the only one. You're not. In this episode, we're talking about fear, the kind that seeps into your bones, shapes your days, and lingers in ways you can't always name. We'll talk about the fear during caregiving, as the end approaches, and in the after. We'll explore how fear intertwines with anxiety and depression, how it grows louder when you're caregiving alone, and how it morphs after caregiving ends into something quieter, but no less real. And I'm going to share my own moments too, because I want you to know with every bit of my heart that you are not alone in this. Fear is the undertone of caregiving, hidden beneath the rhythm of everyday life. You keep it tucked inside, doing your best to be brave. To most people, it's invisible. It's the what ifs, the constant vigilance, the emergency preparedness for every imaginable scenario. My fear was present through all three of my caregiving journeys. Fear when we made the heartbreaking decision to reintubate my mother in the ICU, even though deep down we knew she was dying and there was nothing left we could do. Fear when my uncle went missing in New York City for 8 agonizing days. Fear late at night when the camera alerts pinged, or when I heard another heart-pounding thump as my dad fell or tried to wander outside the house. You know those nights when your body desperately needs rest, but it's coiled like a spring, ready to react? Because what if something happens? What if you miss it? What if this is the night that everything changes? That's fear. Not the kind that jumps out in a Halloween movie or arrives on your doorstep with flashing lights and sirens. This is the kind that seeps quietly into your bones, like a slow-growing cancer, tightening its grip a little more each day. And here's what I know from lived experience. When fear lingers like that, day after day, night after night, it starts to change you. Psychologists talk about how fear activates the amygdala, the brain's threat center. Normally, that response is temporary, but in caregiving, the danger never fully goes away. Your loved one's needs, their fragility, the unpredictability, it keeps that threat system switched on, always on. And when that happens, fear stops being a moment. It becomes a state. That's when anxiety enters. Not necessarily the big panic attack kind, but that quiet, buzzing undercurrent, the state where your mind never stops scanning, never stops preparing. Even in peaceful moments, you can't quite exhale. I don't remember when my dad's nighttime disorientation began, what eventually became his night wandering. At the time, I had transitioned from full-time work to per diem night shifts because I had to care for him alone. I'd installed cameras in the house so I could keep watch while I worked my 7 p. to 7 a.m. shifts. The anxiety began creeping higher as his sleep changed. He went from staying in his bedroom to getting fully dressed and sitting in the living room at night. As a nurse, I knew where this was headed. Fear and anxiety swirled inside me as I tried to focus on behavioral health patients in crisis, knowing I couldn't just walk out mid-shift if something went wrong at home. In those early weeks, he stayed in the living room or eventually returned to bed. But my body was already on high alert. I knew the road ahead, and my mind and nervous system were reacting accordingly. Nothing had actually happened yet, but my body reacted as if it had. That was fear. And that's anxiety. They walk hand in hand. And when this goes on for weeks, months, years, the nervous system gets tired, really tired. It's like keeping every light in the house on 24/7. Eventually, you get that astronomical electricity bill. Research backs this up. Caregivers consistently show significantly higher rates of anxiety and depression than non-caregivers. This hypervigilance, this constant readiness, is more than just stressful. It's physiological. Chronic fear floods the body with stress hormones like cortisol. And when that system stays activated for too long, it can lead to emotional exhaustion, anxiety disorders, even depression. Not because caregivers don't cope well, but because we cope continuously. Fear during caregiving isn't just a reaction to emergencies. It's woven into the fabric of daily life. And most of the time, it's invisible to the outside world. People might see you as strong or calm, but inside, your mind is constantly rehearsing the next potential crisis, and your heart never fully rests. Fear becomes your shadow friend of sorts, always nearby, following you from room to room, decision to decision. You may not always look directly at it, but you feel its presence. It watches silently while you go through your day, whispering those what ifs at the edges of your thoughts. It sits beside you in the quiet moments, the late night hours, the times when no one else sees what you carry. And over time, you almost get used to it being there, like an uninvited house guest who stayed too long, but whose footsteps you've learned to recognize in the dark. There's another truth that many caregivers carry quietly, tucked deep inside. The fear is sharper when you're doing it all alone. When there's no one to share the nights, no sibling taking the weekend shift, no partner stepping in so you can exhale for just a moment. Just you. When you're the only one holding it all, fear doesn't have anywhere else to go. There's no handoff, no your turn, no safety net. It's always you. I remember when I began caring for my dad alone, full-time. At first, I told myself I could handle it. I had been caring for him for many, many years. I cared for my mom and my uncle. I was a nurse. I was capable, organized, strong. But caregiving alone is a different kind of battlefield. Because when you're the only one, you're not just managing the daily tasks. You're managing the entire mental load. Every what if, every worst-case scenario, every flash of the future, it all runs through your head. And the fear grows louder. The anxiety hums constantly. I can't tell you how many nights I sat at the kitchen table at 2 or 3 or 4 a.m., staring at the clock, knowing no one else was coming. If something happened, it was all on me. If I broke, there was no backup plan. That kind of weight doesn't just sit on your shoulders. It is absorbed by your soul. And then came COVID during the last year of my dad's life. The fear I already carried became compounded. The world outside had changed, but inside my house, caregiving had become even more intense. I had to be extra vigilant because I knew deep in my bones that if my dad ended up in the hospital, I wouldn't be able to be with him. I'm sure everyone still remembers, especially caregivers. Visitation policies were strict. Families were separated. So many people dying alone in their hospital beds. And my dad, at 87 years old, wasn't just elderly. He had progressive supranuclear palsy, cognitive decline, and he was a major fall risk. Hospitals were stretched thin. Staff were pushed to their limits. He'd be confused, alone, frightened. And I wouldn't be there to advocate for him, to protect him, to keep watch the way only a caregiver can. And I knew if he went in, he wouldn't come back out. That knowledge sat like a pile of bricks on my chest. It meant that I didn't just have to be vigilant. I had to be relentlessly vigilant, because one trip to the ER could change everything. Research echoes what so many of us lived through. Solo caregivers report significantly higher levels of stress, anxiety, and depression symptoms compared to those with shared caregiving responsibilities. During COVID, these numbers climbed even higher. The combination of isolation, lack of respite, and hospital restrictions created a perfect storm of fear and mental strain. It's not just the tasks that wear you down. It's the relentless vigilance. The sense that you can't ever fully let your guard down. Because if you do, who's there to catch it? And over time, that constant state of readiness takes a toll. The fear and anxiety intertwine, swirling in the background, like white noise you can't shut off. Your nervous system starts to live in survival mode. And the cruelest part? From the outside, people often say things like, "You're amazing," or "I don't know how you do it." But inside, the fear is running a marathon no one else sees. And because you're alone, there's no one to bear witness to it. Fear in solo caregiving stops being a shadow friend at your side. It starts to feel like it's living inside you. You carry it everywhere, like a second heartbeat. Then there's a season in caregiving that's unlike any other. It's quiet, but not peaceful. Still, but not calm. It's that in-between space, when you know the end is coming, but you don't know when. And that's when fear changes. It's no longer just about emergencies or daily vigilance. It becomes heavier, sharper, an awakening. It grabs you by the shoulders and breathes down the back of your neck. It lives in the pauses between breaths. I remember those last few days with my dad so clearly. Every silence stretched just a little too long. I'd find myself watching his chest rise and fall because I couldn't hear his breathing. And every day, that fear ran rampant in my mind. Is this the day everything changes? This is what psychologists call anticipatory grief. It's grieving the loss in advance, while still living inside the caregiving role. It's mourning the inevitable, while simultaneously tending to the daily needs of the person you love. And honestly, your nervous system doesn't know the difference between soon and now. That fear response stays switched on, often for months. Time behaves differently in this season. Hours stretch and contract unpredictably. Days blur together. You live minute to minute, not daring to look too far ahead, because you can't. You're simultaneously preparing and trying to hold on, and fear is threaded through every bit of it. This is the part of caregiving people don't talk about enough. The waiting, the listening, the quiet terror of knowing something irreversible is coming, but not knowing when. It's isolating. It's exhausting. And somewhere inside, you know it's the end. People often think that when caregiving ends, the fear ends too. But that's not what happens. Fear doesn't pack up and leave just because the caregiving chapter closes. It changes shape. It slips quietly to the corners of the after. For so long, fear had a clear focus. The crisis at hand, the next fall, the next medical appointment, the unpredictable night. But when caregiving ends, the house quiets, and in that stillness, fear takes on new forms. Fear of the future, fear of the unknown stretch of days ahead, fear of who you are without the roles that defined you for so long. These are the new fears no one talks about, because when caregiving ends, people often assume the story ends too. But for us, it's just a new chapter, one that begins in silence, with fear quietly sitting beside us, like that shadow friend again. Only this time, it's wearing a different face. And it's not just emotional. Research shows that former caregivers experience elevated anxiety and depressive symptoms for months, even years after caregiving ends. The body and mind that have lived in hypervigilance don't simply switch off. When that purpose suddenly disappears, it leaves behind a kind of void. And fear rushes in to fill that space. There's also the fear of identity. When caregiving ends, so much of your daily structure, your sense of purpose, your why, vanishes almost overnight. You're left holding questions that echo louder than you expect. Who am I now? How do I move forward? Can I move forward? Is there time to start over again? That's what fear in the after looks like. It's not frantic. It's quiet, but still incredibly unnerving. It sits beside you in the everyday moments. It shows up in the silence of the night, in the blank spaces of your calendar, and in a mirror when you catch yourself wondering who's looking back. It's the fear of someone who has given everything they have, sacrificed dreams, time, and years of their life, and now faces the terrifying task of moving forward, of becoming again. If any part of this conversation today has echoed inside you, please hear me. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are human. Fear has walked beside you because you have loved deeply, because you've shown up again and again, through exhaustion, uncertainty, heartbreak, and impossible choices. Fear became your shadow friend, not because you failed, but because you cared enough to stay fully, fiercely, faithfully through it all. The truth is, fear may never disappear entirely, but it doesn't get to write the next chapter. You do. And you don't have to do it alone. This community, New York Girl Again, was built for this season, for the after, for the quiet moments when fear tries to whisper that you're the only one feeling this way. I want to invite you to join us on our website at newyorkgirlagain.com and on social media, and share your fears, the loud ones, the quiet ones, the ones that wake you in the middle of the night, the ones you've never said out loud. Because when we name our fears, we take away some of their power. And when we speak them together, we remind each other, we are not alone. We are still here. We are still becoming, and the story isn't over. And if this episode spoke to you, please share it. Send it to another caregiver who might need to hear these words. Post it to your stories. Tag us. Your voice helps this community grow. And you never know whose heart your share might reach. Thank you for spending this time with me today, for your courage, for your caring heart, and for walking this after with me. Until next time, I'm Thérèse, and this is New York Girl Again, the After.